heal the soul with real talk and deep dives into hidden mental and emotional valleys and steep peaks of what ails and hinders us from thriving far and beyond surviving. This is a show to awaken the sleeping giants and hidden phenomenal in all of us. R&R. Welcome. You've entered the space to release and rediscover. R&R with Topaz is an experience fueled to heal the soul with real talk and deep dives into hidden mental and emotional valleys and steep peaks of what ails and hinders us from thriving far and beyond surviving. This is a show to awaken the sleeping giants and hidden phenomenal in all of us. R&R. Welcome. Entered the space to release and rediscover. R&R with Topaz is an experience fueled to heal the soul with real talk and deep dives into hidden mental and emotional valleys and steep peaks of what ails and hinders us from thriving far and beyond surviving. This is a show to awaken the sleeping giants and hidden phenomenal in all of us. R&R. Welcome. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to R&R with Topaz. It is Monday Mind Matters. It's that time. That's right, when we are addressing the things that affect our mental capacity, our emotional nurturing, and emotional capacity as well. And all of the issues that we address here at R&R with Topaz are designed to give us an opportunity for some reality checks as it relates to our mental health, but also gives us an opportunity to identify solutions, identify support and resource opportunities to tap into so that we can what? Release and rediscover. We do not want to live our lives stagnant and stuck in a place of toxicity, dysfunction, frustration, and just irritability. Certainly not as it relates to our mental and emotional health. We as a community have just done ourselves a disservice as it relates to really qualifying and valuing our mental health. So here on Monday Mind Matters at Release and Rediscover, we are looking at those opportunities to just breathe, release, vent, express, process. We take the deep dives into those places that most people do not want to journey into, but that doesn't mean that they're not necessary, because they are. So welcome, welcome, welcome to the space. We are on CTN Media. That's right, a media for us, by us, where we are changing the narrative. And of course, we are powered by BBI, the Black Business Initiative. You can catch CTN Media on YouTube. Go to YouTube and pull up some of the other broadcast programs that CTN Media brings to you, and find yourself getting educated, getting encouraged and inspired by things that matter to us, topics and issues, concerns, everything that's relevant to our community. You can find that at CTN Media. And forgive me while I try to get my camera together here. I'm having some technical issues, but we're going to work through this thing. So how is everybody this evening? Prayerfully, everyone is has come through the weekend and this past week feeling blessed, feeling like you have a reason to just be excited to be alive, be grateful to be alive. And if you're not in that place to where you feel grateful to be alive, then we're going to help you to get there. That is part of the objective. It's time to move beyond the average. It's time to move beyond just surviving. We are looking at what is required to move beyond that place and to thrive so that we can truly live life abundantly. So, as you know, these past 2 weeks in October have been dedicated to addressing the issue of breast cancer awareness. October is known for being the month dedicated to bringing breast cancer awareness to the world. Education, prevention, teaching community how to take care of themselves to prevent breast cancer, and then how to manage if you happen to be someone who's been diagnosed with breast cancer. So that has been what we have dedicated our last 2 shows to. Well, for the next couple of weeks in October, I am dedicating this time to domestic violence awareness, intimate partner violence. That is what we are looking to do over these next 2 weeks, because that is an area that often gets left out of the focus for October, because all of the emphasis is on breast cancer, so much to the point to where a lot of people don't even realize that breast cancer that domestic violence is also part of what October is dedicated to. So particularly as a survivor myself, this is a very
personal issue. It means a lot to me to support victims out there and to assist people, not just through my private practice as a therapist, but also as a woman of God, as a woman, period, who supports women empowerment and particularly dedicated to protecting Black women, building a platform and supporting a circle and a support system that helps to elevate us and move us out of positions of victimization. So if you're interested in therapy or counseling, please reach out for a free 30-minute teleconsult with Rediscovery Through Wellness. Rediscovery Through Wellness is my practice, and the mission of Rediscovery Through Wellness is guiding people through unexpected life changes, both of which breast cancer and being exposed to or experiencing domestic violence can put you in a place to where you're having to shift without preparation. You're having to adjust to a new normal, reestablish yourself and build a new foundation because of what those two traumatic events in one's life can cause. And with that being said, if you are a survivor of breast cancer, or maybe you've just recently been diagnosed, or you are a survivor of domestic violence and you are ready for help, you are ready for support, I am offering $50 off for the month of October to survivors of breast cancer and family members of those, as well as survivors of domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. If you know someone who can benefit from this therapy, have them to contact me at the number listed, to text me their information, to set up a free 30-minute consult, and they are eligible for $50 off of each session in the month of October. So hopefully that is something that will be of benefit to someone out there. Well, with that being said, one other announcement. As always, I offer condolences to those of you out there who may have had a loss. You're still grieving, you're still dealing with the circumstances surrounding that loss. Just want to offer condolences to you, to your family, for the circumstances and just now having to make that adjustment to living life differently, to living life with this new reality, that person that you loved so much, that person that has been a part of your life, is now gone. Deepest condolences to you. And of course, there are grief and loss services available through my practice. I do offer individual therapy, family, and group, as well as couples sessions. So that's family, because a lot of times with domestic violence, the children are forgotten. The focus is so much on the victim and the adults in the situation that the children are forgotten. And we have to remember that if there are children in the situation, they are impacted. So I do offer family therapy, not just as it relates to domestic violence, but in general. And individual therapy, couples therapy, and group therapy. So if that is something that you think you could benefit from, again, call the number on your screen or text me some times that might work for you for a free 30-minute teleconsult. All right, well, let's get down to business. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, connect with us on YouTube as often as you can, and share these platforms out, share these podcasts out, and let your friends and family, community know that we are here, and we are here changing the narrative at CTN Media. So like, subscribe, and share. All right, well, I am ready to just move right along. I want to invite you to drop your comments in the chat. If you'd like to call in your comments and like to be on the air, then call that same number that was on the screen earlier, 303-801-8052. and we can chat on the air if you have questions or comments for our upcoming guests, then also put that in the chat. All right. Well, without further ado, we are going to go ahead and bring my guest on this evening, an incredible warrior, a woman that I consider to be definitely more than a survivor for what God has brought her through. And she is still in her right mind and able bodied and still just, I mean, I would have never known her story had she not shared that. It's definitely not something that you can tell from just looking at her or just being in her presence. A beautiful soul, a beautiful heart, and I am just so honored to have her on the show this evening. So welcome, and make sure that you unmute your phone and come on and say hello and just say a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your journey. What do you do? Are you currently doing anything to give back to people who are suffering from domestic violence? What are some things unrelated to your journey that you'd like people to know about you?
Good evening to Mrs. Topaz. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Well,
I'm so honored, by the way, that you accepted the invitation to be on the show. Thank you.
no problem. First, giving an honor to God, who is the head of my life, because I'm telling you now, without Him, I would not be here today. Um, but I am Ann. My full name is Ann Quenisha Norris. I've been a nurse now for 11 years. I actually just recently got my bachelor's in nursing. So definitely a loving, caring person. Came from a very spiritual background. Brought up in the church, sing, dance. I'm just full of life. So I have five kids. Their ages range from 4 years old to will be 20 actually, right after Christmas. So definitely I'm pretty.
And how old are your children again?
I have a 4-year-old. I have a 16, 11-year-old. I have a 18-year-old and a 20-year one who will be 20 um, on the 26th of December.
Wow. So you got a full load on your hand.
Yes, ma'am.
And how are your children doing?
We have our days. Um, Definitely my son, because he's the only boy out of all five. He struggles every day, but he does get through. He goes through counseling. Me and him, we talk about it. I'm very open with him. He knows that he can talk to me about anything, good or bad, and that I will always be here for him.
That's important. That's important. Definitely. So, what made you decide to accept the invitation?
You know, uh, when you're a spiritual and you know that the you're going through it's only through him, and that he is real, you cannot help but to share your story. Um, Things that you've gone through has brought you to. And so I feel like my story is going to really mess with God. I just think that my story needs to be out there because you don't hear too many stories on survivors who have been in a situation like I have and been shot 3 times and survived. People have been shot for less and have not made it. So I find that to be, I'm a walking miracle.
Okay. So, let's talk about your relationship. Um, who is the person that is responsible for the violent attack against you, and how did you meet?
So the person who I had domestic violence with was my ex-husband. We were together for 20 years. married for 14 of those years. We met when I was in high school. I had a daughter prior to our relationship, and it wasn't all bad. It was a good relationship. A lot of things that I remember that were positive, and that's what kept us strong and kept our relationship going as long as it did.
And did you all get married right away, or how long did you date before you got married?
I want to say it had been maybe about 4. It was right after our second daughter was born, a couple months after her.
Okay. Now, did you say 4 months or 4 years? Because you're going out a little bit, in and out.
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, what was he like? How would you describe him?
At the beginning, it was he was a hard worker. He loved to have fun. He used to race. Matter of fact, we had race cars, and we would go and race down on the racetrack, and we would build it together. We would go to the movies, go out to eat. He was definitely full of love and full of life. He enjoyed being around family. He used to dance. Very sociable.
So, a pretty normal dating relationship, and even when you got married, a pretty normal marriage.
Yes, ma'am.
When you look back on it now, are there any characteristics that you saw in him that suggested he was dangerous
You
or
know,
that he had violent tendencies?
I did. Um, it would be like, if I would come home and he would say the curtains are moving. And then he would have left the house, or it would be somebody running out the back door when it would have been us getting ready for a celebration, or comments on certain members of the family and things that they were doing that wasn't happening. And of course, maybe he's seen something, or maybe it was just that moment something was wrong, but never that there was a mental illness that was underlying.
So, are you describing what would be considered paranoia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then what about hallucinating? Was he seeing and hearing things as well?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Okay. So possibly a paranoid schizophrenic. Was he ever diagnosed?
No, he was diagnosed. We had went to counseling because I started seeing the signs getting a little bit more intense. So we would go to counseling, and they had prescribed medications to him, tried to get counseling for him. They did not give him a confirmed diagnosis because too sporadic. It was kind of all over the place. So they didn't know whether it was a bipolar situation or if it was. So he never got a definite diagnosis.
Okay. And let me ask you this. Are you I'm going to get off, go in another direction just for a moment. Do you have another place possibly in your home where you might have a better connection? Because we are losing you every few words. You're going out.
Okay, let me see what I can do.
Okay. And in the meantime, were there so I'm hearing paranoia, that he was seeing things and he would assume that, there was something there that wasn't there. Was there anything as it related to his temper that suggested he had a bad temper or that he had an anger problem?
Uh, that's kind of hard to really, because when you're actually in that situation, you kind of overlook so much. And so one of the things that I do recall was he used to smoke cigars. So, and he didn't work for a while. Because there was also a paranoia with him thinking that I was either messing around with another person, whether it be at his job or at my job, or if it was someone who was down the street. So he stopped working. So, but he still had his habits of wanting cigars and at times have a drink of alcohol. So if I wouldn't buy those things for him, then it was an argument, and that's when physical abuse started occurring.
Okay. Okay. And what did that look like? And how, first of all, how far in were you in the relationship at that point, uh, or in the marriage when he started to become aggressive or violent?
I want to say between 8 and 9 years.
Okay. All right. So you all were together for a long time, um, before it progressed to that point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think that's important for our audience to know that it's not always evident at the beginning of a relationship, that your partner may have violent or abusive tendencies. But more often than not, there are red flags that suggest that this person may be volatile and may present risk to your safety. So we want to pay attention to red flags, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those red flags at the end of the show this evening. But I am going to be revisiting this again next week, and we'll get into more of what those characteristics look like and some preventive things that you can do. But so back to you though. And you were married to this man, and when he first started getting aggressive, what did that aggression look like?
It was physical. There was times when I would get choked, where to the point where I would black out. There was times where I had a sword um, across my neck when I and woke up to that at night.
Are you saying a sword, like a sword that knights use, like a sword?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Um, and so, and definitely coming home from work, hearing, kind of just like that fear, like, oh my God, what am I going to expect today? And lifting up the garage and see him sitting there. And then all of a sudden, um, hearing him talking to whatever imaginary person's there about how bad I am or about things that I'm doing in our relationship, sexual acts. So that's what it looked like. Things on TV telling him that I'm performing these sexual acts and that he should hurt me.
Okay, and how did you respond to that? What were you thinking in your mind about what was happening?
I felt like eventually he's going to change. Like, I took my vows very seriously. Do death do us part, rich or poor, sickness and health. So those vows, I'm like, I'm going to stick in here with him. I'm going to encourage him and support him. When he got in his fits of rage, I would go to a certain area in the house. When I felt like he was escalating, I would make sure I would be in my room. I knew that the kids were my safe spot. They were
Mhm.
that he didn't want them to see his acts of violence. So as long as they were around, he wouldn't do anything to me. So I would, so my, she's 16 now, but for the longest time, she would not leave and spend the night at anyone's house because of that fear that her dad would hurt me. And so she would sleep very lightly. So any sound, any noises that were made, she would quickly get up and come to my side just to see what's going on.
And how old was she at the time?
This has went from the time when she was 9 years old up until she was 15.
So that was a long time to live in fear like that.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think she was dealing with it? Would you guys talk about it? Um, was she would she ask you questions, or was it something that you just swept under the carpet?
At times we would talk about it. Um, when me and him signed the divorce papers and we were separated because it was a long time. Like even prior to our signing divorce papers, we were separated. That was my time of pulling away, and so I started
Mhm.
seeing her getting more comfortable, but she never stopped watching. She never put her guard down. All the way up until that day, she never put her guard down. She just did not trust her dad. Their relationship was not strong like a typical father-daughter relationship.
Okay. And did she ever indicate that, as far as you know, did she ever say anything to her father about how afraid she was of him?
No, even to this day, she has this strength, and she kind of carries these broad shoulders, and she will not take too much of anything because she was one to always stand up to her dad. Out of all of the kids, she would stand up to him. If it was something that he said that she didn't like, whether it be to me or to her, she would always voice it to him, whether it be in a
Mhm.
question or whether it been in a very low conversation. That's just how she's always been.
Okay. So, what was it that, aside from the fact that you took your vows for what they were, and what was it aside from that that kept you there for as long as you were in the marriage? Um, what kept you there?
So as far as in the marriage, it was a verbal abuse. You hear a lot of people, people, they look at everything from the outside. And
Hmm.
they're like, we see this going on. You should leave him. He's not good for you. This is not love. But when you actually step into a domestic situation where there is verbal abuse and physical abuse, there develops a fear. There's a fear because of him saying to me specifically that I was not beautiful, that I was a mean and evil person, that no one would love me the way that he loved me, not even my family. Um, and so, and that the fact that I had 5 kids, that nobody's going to want anybody with 5 kids. So when you take all that and you're absorbing that
Hmm.
every day, you start believing that. So I believed that I wasn't beautiful. I believed that nobody was going to want me. Nobody loved me like he did. This was love. This is what love looked like. And so I became comfortable with that and I became accepting of it. And so I learned how to change my lifestyle in order to make myself comfortable and not put myself in danger so much. Like I said, so going upstairs and being in a separate area, making sure that I bought his cigars or his liquor when he wanted it so that there wouldn't be an argument. Those were how I was able to cope and get by.
And this is a very common theme. As I speak to our audience for a moment, uh, partners who will belittle you and do everything in their power to degrade you and make you feel less than, make you feel inadequate, make you feel that they're the only ones who will love you. No one will want you. No one will love you more, and they will work to convince you that this is what love is and that they truly love you. And even though he was being abusive, was there anything that he was doing to show you a different side of him to help solidify the distorted messages that he was giving you?
I think the biggest thing that for me was that he would always say, I'm sorry. It was always with every situation, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. We'll seek counseling. We shouldn't do this to the kids. And then it would be, maybe it would be, he'll cook a nice dinner for me for a while. There wouldn't be an argument for maybe a week or two. So it would be very, very peaceful in the home for a couple of weeks. But then all of a sudden it will slowly get back into that old cycle.
And that again is also a very common um, way that abusive partners will uh, manipulate and control their victims, because they will do things to try to authenticate their apology, if you will. I know that in my situation, my husband would buy things. He would buy me things. He would, and like you said, there would be a change in behavior for a period of time, and sometimes that change might last even a year. Was my experience. Sometimes it's for a few days, and let me ask you this: did you find yourself walking on pins and needles in the meantime, in between
Mhm.
um, those incidents?
Yes, ma'am, all the time. When you go in a grocery store, you hold your head down because you don't want to make eye contact, even with somebody who it wasn't even you're attracted to.
Right.
Or if you're going to a family gathering, making sure that you don't socialize with certain family members too long, or you don't hug them a certain way because it might be taken the wrong way because you're going to hear about it later when you got home.
And so it's a situation where the abuser is really good at making it your fault
Yes.
and trying to convince you of that. I want to just pause for a minute and read some encouraging comments from your audience here. Just a couple of things that uh, just to show how much love you have out here. Let's see. I see uh, Danya Williams, and Danya is saying, just really encouraging you and saying how awesome you are. And Sharon Williams is saying how much they love you, and just really lots of encouraging comments here. Thumbs up, and just letting you know that they've got your back, that they're there for you. And so I don't know if you can see the comments, but I wanted to just share that with you.
I see them now. Yes.
Yeah, so your crew is out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Amen. Danya, Sharon,
All,
uh,
all of
Lois. All right. Amen. Amen. That's
yeah.
beautiful that you have this support. So, did that, which takes me then to just a nice segue. Did you have a support system at the time that you were living in this nightmare?
I did. My mother was very supportive. My sister, my brother, even believe it or not, my sister-in-law. She has always been there too. She knew, and she has never changed. She never thought of me any different. Even to this day, she's actually my best friend. So,
That's beautiful.
but it's not even just that. My whole family, they have been up here with me. They have talked to me. They have encouraged me, let me know that they do love me and that whatever goes on, that they will be here for me. So, it's just that I just didn't have my eyes open.
And that's a blessing, because there are lots of times where in-laws or the family members of the abuser are very familiar with that individual's abusive behavior, but they are enablers. They're enabling that individual in their abuse, and they're not supportive of the victim. They will often make excuses for the victim or for the abuser, make excuses for their behavior, and really align with the abuser in trying to convince you that you're the bad guy, that you're the one in the wrong, and it's not that person. So for you to be in a family where you have the support that you have is truly an amazing blessing.
Yes, ma'am.
Definitely. Now, were they aware of the extent of the abuse that you were experiencing at the time, or did you keep that to yourself?
A lot of it I kept to myself. I would share certain stories with my mom during the time and my sister. I would also, with my sister-in-law, I shared certain stories, but I never gave the full story. Um, it was something I didn't want to share. I was ashamed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And shame is an ugly culprit. Shame is something that will keep somebody bound for years. It's a stronghold. It's a form of a stronghold. It's bondage, and we have to break through the chains of shame as it relates to things that we don't have to carry. And whatever it is, there is a time when we have to come to grips with whatever we need to own that belongs to us. And when it doesn't belong to us, we need to release it and let it go. Uh, Overseer says your testimony will free a lot of women who are experiencing this type of abuse. Keep bringing awareness to the signs of abuse. You are worth receiving authentic love. That is so real. Amen. So worth receiving authentic love. And to everyone out there who may be in that situation and you are still in that nightmare, you are still maybe even sitting next to or in the presence of your abuser and afraid to say anything in this moment. We just want to encourage you. We want to let you know that you don't have to continue to live that way. There are resources available when you decide that you're ready to get out of that situation. I want you to call that number on the screen, 303-801-8052. I don't care what time it is. I will get you connected to resources for 24-hour crisis so that you can get the support that you need. The Trauma and Resilience Center is a place in Denver that also offers immediate support and free services to victims in these kind of situations. So then getting back to your, how you were carrying this, a lot of it all by yourself because of shame. The Trauma Center 24-hour crisis line is on the screen, so please write that down if you are watching and you are in need of support, or you know someone who is. Please provide that 24-hour crisis number to that individual. So given the fact that you were dealing with so much of this all by yourself, and it sounds like your daughter as well, because she was a witness to so much of what was happening. What were you doing to just maintain your sanity for all those years?
Oh my gosh, I worked like crazy. I worked full time. I actually got a second job. So the days that I was off, or when I got off of work as nursing at a nursing home, I would go do home visits. And then, like I said, I went to school, and I was in school for the longest time. And that was a full time as well. So I always kept myself busy. When I would get off of work, I would come to my mom's house and I would just sit, and as long as I could before I had to go home to,
Mm.
to make sure that he wouldn't be upset because I was gone too long.
And I just want to say that these type of abusers are such master manipulators that they will foster a tendency in your personality that may not have existed previously, to where you become an enabler. And a lot of times people don't realize that that's what they're doing. They're enabling. Anytime we stay in a situation that is abusive, or violent or harmful to us in any way, whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, when we stay in that situation, that means we're not holding that individual accountable. We are, it's a underlying message that we're really okay with what they're doing, even though we may say we don't like it, we may threaten to leave, we may threaten to call the police. But if you don't call the police and then stick to the report by showing up in court and holding them accountable, if we don't leave the situation, we are enabling them to continue to do what they do. So in your situation, your experience became more and more volatile. So can you talk about that?
Um, so there's not a type of abuse that I have not went through. I went through physical, I went through verbal, I went through mental abuse, I went through sexual abuse.
And
Uh,
that's with this same person?
yes, yep.
Hmm.
Um, and like I said, we were actually separated for a long time. Um, and then finally going through the divorce. But my final act of violence was being shot.
Hmm. Hmm. And so you were separated for how long before you reconnected with him?
No, it was longer than that. It had to been, so we stayed in the home for a while together, but we were still actually separated. So we wouldn't sleep together, nothing of that sort. So that was actually 4 or 5 years.
Was he
Um,
abusive during that time?
During that time, it wasn't, how can I put it? It wasn't abusive. It was more so, it was like a almost like a roommate situation, you know.
Okay.
He did his thing. He still didn't work. He still stayed at the house all the time. So I mean, I still made sure like he had cigars and his liquor and things like that. During that period, his mom had passed. So I'm like, okay, we definitely got to make sure that, he has everything that he needs, because now he's going through a mental thing because his mom just passed away. But that separation started at the birth of my daughter. And then, finally it just came time. I'm like, we're not sleeping together. We're not doing anything. I'm miserable. You're staying in this house for free. It's time for you and me to separate fully. And that's when we finally signed the divorce papers willingly. Both signed them.
Hmm. Okay.
And then he moved out the house.
So during that time that he was staying there rent free for approximately 4 years or a little over, um, why do you think you allowed that or that you were okay with that?
Again, being the person I am, that nurturing, caring person, I
Hmm.
knew that there was something wrong, health wise, and I felt that obligation. I felt obligated
Okay.
to take care of him. I felt like, if I don't take care of him, then who else will?
And that's not unusual either. I just want to say to those watching and even to you yourself, that's not unusual that a victim will feel responsible for their abuser, feel responsible for them and their circumstances when their life starts going awry, and they are just that narcissistic where they have the nerve to come to you for help, to ask you to support them in their down times. And oftentimes that is exactly what they get, because that is how arrogant they are, and that really speaks to the degree of damage that they've done to the person in the situation. Because when we're doing that, we are so damaged to where we don't realize that we owe this person absolutely nothing. We owe them nothing. Even if you were divorced or I'm sorry, single, and your divorce wasn't final, if you're still sometimes operating under that mindset of the vows, and so you feel like you're still responsible. But when people begin to harm us, when people begin to do us to do damage, we then are released from that obligation. We are released from that responsibility. And so, to anyone watching out there, if you're staying in your situation because you believe that that is your responsibility and obligation, because your vows say, till death do us part, God never intended for us to be in abusive situations. He values us. He sees us as his beloved, precious sons and daughters. So there is no way that God would ordain us staying in abusive marriages. If there's someone out there who has been operating under that spell, that because it's till death do you, at the very least, then I would encourage you that you separate from that person, live separately until you feel released to go forward with a divorce, but do not stay in that home based on those circumstances. God said, or Jesus said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Key thing, that you might have life, have life. And so having life is part of being safe and being healthy. Danya says we women get trapped in the feeling of obligation to stay in a horrible relationship. Yes, we do, often, but that also has to do with our self-esteem. That's because we don't recognize our worth. We are not embracing who we are as women of God, as women who were created and crafted by God's own hand. That in and of itself makes us valuable, precious gems to God. So regardless of what the man may be saying or your partner may be saying, because we know that there are also abusive women, that we have to own the fact that we are worth more than what this person may even have the capacity to embrace or appreciate. So you then eventually decided to get the divorce. There was an agreement or consensus to the divorce. And then what happened after that?
So we went on, and he would say things like, I know I've lost my wife, but I don't want to lose my best friend. I would never hurt you again. Again, using that same
Mm-hmm.
mentality and getting me wrapped up back in there, and me, letting my guard down. And so I would never, keep him from the kids if he wanted to see the kids or come by for a holiday. We were still very much so operating on a friendship. That's in my mind. I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
okay, he's getting it. We're just friends. There's no marriage. There's no nothing. I'm moving on with my life. I wish him the best. And but it's very much separated. It's a different situation now. Um, and so that happened, but again, everything ended up being at that final day in January.
And what happened on that day? Let's start from the first contact on that day.
So on that day, I was actually going to work. Um, I had got up early in the morning. I normally don't even work Saturday, but I was going in to, go do some paperwork. My mother had called me and, to see if I was up. We had a couple of words. I told her that I would be over after I got off to get my youngest daughter, and went down, and, I'm on my stationary bike riding it, and then all of a sudden in the right side of my peripheral, I see my ex-husband standing there aiming a gun at my head.
Now, did he break in or how did he get in the house?
So he actually came through the side door.
Okay.
Yep. And when I had first noticed everything, what happened was he was sitting, how was it? He was sitting in front of the stove, and he had a blanket wrapped around him. And so he said that he was, getting warm and things like that. And I'm like, okay, well, you didn't have to do all that. I got on my bike. And then at that point, like I
So
said,
you knew he was there when you got on the bike. He was already in the house.
yep, he had already came in the house. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how long had he been in the house?
Not even,
Um,
not too long.
okay.
Yeah, not too long.
Okay.
Um,
And the
and it
gun was your gun, right?
was my gun. It was my.
And where did he get it from? Where was it?
It was in my car. It was in my car in my glove compartment. I always leave it there.
And did he have keys to your car or was your car unlocked?
It was unlocked.
So
No,
he had the gun when he came in the house.
that is the part I don't know.
Okay.
Know that part. Normally I lock my door to my car. That night
Hmm.
I did not.
Okay.
So, and how I found out that it was my gun was through the police report.
Hmm.
And, of course, my sister and everybody, they're telling me all the information that they know. But once I got out the hospital, I was able to read the police report. So he did. He used my gun on me, and it was a 380 with hollow tips. So a very powerful.
Wow. Wow. So you see him out of your peripheral vision.
Mm-hmm.
He's standing there. And then what happens?
This thought started running through my mind like, this cannot be happening. This can't be real. And so he slowly started the trigger.
and I tried to jump off of my stationary bike, and that's when he shot me through my breast. Once I finally got off the bike, he shot me through my neck, and then the final shot was in my stomach.
Wow. And were you conscious the entire time, or did you start to lose consciousness after the first bullet entered?
I got weak, but never lost consciousness. Um, my kids, I had two of my kids there, my 10-year-old son and my 15-year-old daughter, and they had came downstairs. And so when they had came to the area where the scene was, he was standing over me with the gun still aiming down at me. And so he turned it on my daughter, not seeing my son behind her, and told her to get back upstairs.
So so the one thing that you trusted would not happen, he was gesturing to do that one thing, and the thing that you thought would protect you did not protect you on that day, because you believed that he would not do anything ever in front of your children as long as the children were around.
Yes, ma'am.
So he shoots you first in the breast,
Yes.
then in the neck,
Yes, ma'am.
and then in your stomach and your abdomen.
Yes.
And now you're on the ground,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
on the ground and you're bleeding. You're bleeding out. And what is he doing at this point?
I really didn't bleed out. Believe it
Mm,
or not. Being shot that many times, um, there was really no blood at the that was mine. It was all his.
mm,
So my daughter and my son had went back upstairs. My daughter told my son to stay in his room while she grabbed her phone and called 911. Once she did that, she started to come back downstairs when she heard a fourth shot. The fourth shot was him shooting himself in the head and killing himself. And so
so go
yeah,
ahead.
we laid in our den, in the den area, and I was facing him and he was looking right at me. So at that moment, I didn't think that he had killed himself because he was still moving.
Mm. And were there any words coming from his mouth?
No, he never said not one word to me, not one word.
What kind of movement were you seeing?
Um, Kind of jolting,
Mm,
um, twitching on the ground.
hmm.
Yeah.
And that was probably because he was because he shot himself in the head, and so that was his brain communicating with his body. But he was probably already, as hard as he probably already stopped. But that was the last bit of his body reacting to the violent death. And what were you thinking as you were laying there?
I was my kids. My daughter, when she came down the stairs, she came down immediately and she came straight to my side. And while she was on the phone with 911, I was talking to her about applying pressure to my stomach, trying to be as calm as possible. So while she was on the phone, she held the pressure. And then I was watching the entryway as my son continued to come downstairs. And I was trying to encourage him to go to the living room area so that he didn't see too much of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Whole thought process was being there for them and trying to keep them calm and making sure my son wasn't seeing too much. But then it was also, I'm a mother and I have to survive. So
Mm-hmm.
being a nurse, I know that, as soon as got excited or try to start moving, that's when blood will start flowing and
Mm.
die. I didn't want my kids to see that.
And so, wow, I just want to say something to the people out there who may not be believers, anybody that's watching. And when I say believers, believing in the power of God Almighty and how God works, and the fact that He will assign angels to watch over you, to protect you, to guard you. I need you to say again what kind of gun this was. And these were hollow point bullets?
Yes, it was a 380, a semi-automatic with hollow tips.
And for those of you out there that are familiar with guns and ammunition, you know that is no lightweight gun by any means, not a lightweight gun. And so the fact that you were able to survive that is nothing but the work of God. And the Spirit of the Lord was there present to sustain you, to ensure that the bullets that were entering your body did not enter vital organs that would have left you bleeding out for real. We know that the jugular vein is in the neck. We know that there are major arteries in those places where he shot you. And that he shot you in places that, like you said earlier, could have easily killed you with the initial bullet.
Yeah.
So, I just have to give all praises to God. We just can't even go any further without saying thank you, Lord, for just for his mercy, full ways in which he protects and guides. And he said, I will watch over you. I am your protector. He said, I will command angels concerning you to sit you high upon the rock, to ensure that you don't strike your foot against a stone. He says that, I am the God who will contend with those who contend with you. The weapons formed against you, they will not prosper. I mean, we could go on and on and on. So I just feel like I have to acknowledge what God did in this situation, because there are so many circumstances or so many details that could have been very different than what they were. And the fact that he shot himself one time and he was done,
Yeah.
that says something. Overseer says, if there is someone watching and you are experiencing abuse, let this testimony save your life. Amen. I also want to say that if there is someone watching who may be being triggered right now, I just want to offer you some encouragement in this moment. Please seek the support that you need. We'll put that 24-hour number up there again for Trauma and Resilience Center. Get support. You are welcome to call my number, because I know that sometimes, especially if you are a victim yourself and you're hearing someone else's story, it's enough to send you back through a space of darkness. And fear and trauma, and just reliving that trauma. PTSD is real. It is a very real thing. So can you share with our audience how you were impacted? What kind of injuries did you sustain as a result of those 3 bullet wounds? Do you have any permanent damage or side effects now? It hasn't even been a year, by the way. I don't think we talked about that. This happened earlier in 2021, so it hasn't even been a year. So can you talk about how this has affected how you function on a day-to-day basis?
So when you talk about function, I have full function. I still walk. I actually work 2 jobs. So I went back to work full time, worked 2 jobs. I'm traveling. I'm enjoying life.
Wow.
But the injuries are all with me. But it does not change who I am. It doesn't define who I am. Like you said,
Mhm.
you won't notice that I have gone through something so traumatic. Um, I've had 1 kidney removed. A part of my stomach was removed. Some of my small intestines was removed. Most of, more than half of my pancreas was removed. They told me that I was going to be an insulin dependent diabetic for the rest of my life. I was on insulin, and I want to say maybe 3-4 months after I got out the hospital, they checked my A1C. It was within normal limits. I have not been on insulin. I don't have to check my blood sugars. Uh,
Mm-mm-mm.
so I am, the only things that I see on a day to day basis is my scars. And then I have pain times, but I exercise, I work through it. I go through my physical therapy, and that has helped me tremendously with helping decrease that pain and making sure that my strength is up. So I'm actually able to do everything that I did prior to this situation, and I even feel younger and more
Mm.
lively than I did prior to.
Wow. 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 Look at God. Look at God. What the enemy meant to destroy you, to literally take your life, God used that very thing to restore and renew your life and to give you more than what you had prior to. So, talk about how are you doing mentally and emotionally? How are you doing in that area?
So in June, I had my last surgery, which I don't know if we talked about that, but I had 5 major surgeries.
Mm.
So June, they removed my colostomy. I did struggle, have a colostomy. I had a G tube. Um, but again, all that was removed. But if it wasn't for my forgiveness, I had to, again, learn how to forgive immediately. I forgave him as soon as I found out that he had killed himself, because I
Mm.
had not forgiven him, I would have not healed the way I did. At first, they
Let me, let
thought,
me pause you for a minute. Let me pause you for because that's real.
yeah,
And I've talked about that on this platform before. So how awesome to have a witness to say that how unforgiveness can stifle your healing, can stifle your deliverance, can stifle your next steps forward, can stifle your destiny. Unforgiveness is a sickness and a disease and can be a condition all in of itself. So I just really wanted to put the emphasis on that. But you forgave him immediately, and it helped to free you to move in the flow of recovery.
yeah.
Amen. Amen.
So I mean,
Oh,
where I get upset, I scream, I cry, but it's not because of certain things. How can I get upset because of him taking his life away from our kids, especially my son who struggles with knowing
mm,
here. But again, I had to forgive him because I needed to be able to talk to my kids. I had to forgive him because my son looks exactly like him. And if I harbored any anger or animosity towards him, how would I be able to look at my son every day who looks just like him? How would I be able to talk to my kids about the positive things about him? So it's a whole.
do y'all hear that? I'm sorry, but you're saying some very powerful things here that she forgave him because she recognized she had the wisdom to know how important that was going to be in terms of how she moved forward with her children. And she did not move to a place of instilling hate in her children for their father. It's important for people to hear that. It's important for people to hear that. And it speaks volumes to who you are. My goodness, what an incredible, powerful woman. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead. I just had to put emphasis on that.
No, you're fine. And so that's my journey. I know that I'll probably deal with this for the rest of my life, and I know the kids will always remember this. But this will not define who we are. It will not change who we are as a person. I will continue to be that loving, supporting, caring, nurturing woman that I know I am. I will continue to believe in God. Matter of fact, I believe and trust him more now than I even did then. I have humbled myself, and now that peace has intensified. I feel like there's a more peaceful presence when I walk, when I talk to people.
Mm.
When I go to certain places, I look at people and I could sense when they're going through something. And it'd be just that moment where I'll actually share my story with them, and it will change their whole perspective. So seeing how they will transform something that's so angry, and or maybe they're angry at God or at the world, and they're like, you know what? I'm not going through anything. God is always with, so there's not, I don't take my situation, a lot of people will say this is a major event. I don't want to share my story with you because look what you've gone through. But there's no situation that's too big and there's no situation that's too small. There's always a situation. And so we need to depend on each other and lean on each other to pull each other through. Because, like you said earlier, whether it be breast cancer, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be from a male or a woman, whether it be somebody who's going through a situation where they lost their house, it is a trauma. So just bringing people closer to God and giving them that faith that God is real. And as long as you believe that He's real, He never left us. He's always been here with us. We
Amen.
So, but He gives us those moments, those victories to know and to show that He's here. And so that's how I get by every day. Every day.
Mm. Wow, wow. That is powerful. That is powerful. Share, like, subscribe, share. Make sure that you share this out with other people, other platforms. Let them know, because you never know who out there needs this. This is truly a powerful conversation. And, you know, just Shania or Shania, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She said, you took your power back. And that is so real. You took your power back because for years you had relinquished that power. You had relinquished it to him, that allowed you to stay in that oppressed situation, that oppressed, abusive situation. But when you got to the point to where you said enough is enough, and then you took everything back that rightfully belonged to you, and God gave you more. He gave you more than what you started out with. Then lastly, as we bring our show to a close this evening, how are your children doing now? How are they contending with this? Does your son have nightmares? Have you had to get them into counseling? How do you see them in their personality traits that you feel may be connected to that traumatic experience?
My son, definitely, he does have nightmares at times. Sometimes he would come down to my room and he'll just lay me just to make sure I'm still here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Fear of not wanting me to not be in his life anymore. And so, yeah, he does do counseling. He's always on his mind, is always erasing. He's always got to stay busy. My 4-year old, she will voice myself for my mother. At times, she'll say, my dad doesn't love me anymore because he's not here to play with me. Or trying to explain where her dad is and not give too much details because you don't want her to know or to be afraid or to be scared or to be hurt. Um, but telling her, he's in the sky, then trying to find ways to say it differently because in her mind, he's in the sky, so he's by himself and she can't see him. So then really breaking it down to her that he's not by himself, that he's with his mom and his nephew and things like that. And he's watching over her and that he loves her. Like I shared earlier, my 16-year-old, he did not have a relationship with her dad, but being the one that was there, because I always tell her, I said, you saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, do you want to talk about it? And she actually came in and whole story. That's why I'm able to talk about it, not only in my view, but also in her viewpoint, because she was the next person there. But she'll talk only once with me. And then after that, her door is closed and she's not open to talk to counselors or anything like that. But she does go on and she's in volleyball and she keeps herself active and very busy. So each one of us, we take our time and we do things very much so different. My oldest daughter, that's not even his biological daughter, had shared with me that she, at times, he would come to her in her dreams and that she would cry because of her with him, that she didn't know how much of a dad he was until this happened. And so hearing type of stories, my 18-year-old, she took on that mother hen role when I wasn't around. And so she started pouring her love into her siblings, into her grandmother, into myself, and actually started coming out of her shell. That was her way of coping and trying to just be involved with all of us. So each of us, we do things very much so different. But we're here for each other.
Amen. Wow, what a powerful, powerful story. I am so sorry that you had to go through what you went through, but God brought you through it, and now turning that nightmare into an incredible ministry and blessing to be able to help save other lives. And so I just pray that this evening there's someone who was watching, who can benefit from what a Quincy, pronounce your name, Aquincula?
Aquanisha.
Aquanisha, um, Aquanisha Norris has shared so courageously this evening. Thank you, Aquanisha, for trusting me, to even guide you through this conversation this evening. I don't take that lightly. I really appreciate that. And thank you to all of those who have been watching this evening, um, that have just kind of stayed with this, and all of your encouraging words and comments to our guest this evening. Thank you so much for that. Danya, Martha, Richard, Sharon, Meek, and others, Lois, so many out there who have just been just so supportive. And my guess is probably praying for you as you were sharing. How are you feeling right now?
I am okay. Like I said, I know I want to get my story out there because I want to make sure that another person who is going through domestic violence, whether they be a male or female, that they understand that they can get out of it and that God is with them and he will never leave them nor forsake. So always just trust and believe in that. But again, domestic violence is with any situation.
Absolutely.
It's not my story.
And say that again. We lost you.
It said it's not my story to keep. God gave me this story.
Mm-hmm. Amen. And what an unselfish thing on your part. Your heart is just so huge. What a beautiful soul you have. God knew who he could trust that experience with. He trusted it with you, and because his plan was to bring you through it all along, bring you through it whole and unscathed. It reminds me of the scripture, I believe, and it's Isaiah 43. I um, no, Psalms 18. I'm getting it mixed up, but it is in Isaiah where we talk about though the water, the though we're in the fire, we will not be consumed, and the tide will not overtake us. And so you were in the fire, but you were not consumed, and you were in the storm, and it did not overtake you. And even when I think about the three Hebrew brothers, who were in the fire and came out, and there was no smoldering or smell of the fire that they were in. And that's truly how I see you. Thank you again for being my guest this evening. Thank you for tuning in to R&R this evening. We'll be back next Monday at the same time and we will be continuing the conversation on domestic violence awareness, intimate partner violence. If you are a family member of someone who has experienced domestic violence, or maybe you grew up yourself in a household where there has been domestic violence, please reach out to me. I'd love to speak with you about possibly being a guest on the show next week. I'd like to hear from children who have survived, and maybe you're adults now, but you remember clearly of what it was like being in that household. Or maybe you're another family member who was walking through this journey with someone. And we want to hear from you, because vicarious trauma is also real. Vicarious trauma is the trauma that people experience who are not directly impacted, but indirectly impacted. So thank you again. This has been R&R with Topaz on CTN Media. Make sure that you tune in tomorrow, Tuesday at 4 p.m. on CTN Media for 7 Generations Black, and on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. for the Resource Report. This, again, is Topaz, R&R with Topaz, and my special guest this evening who shared a courageous story. Feel free to pull it back up on YouTube and watch it again if you came in late, but like, subscribe, and share. Have a good evening, everybody. Stay safe. God bless you.
God bless you.